Angkor Wat, the largest religious monument, its towers rising from the jungle.
In the middle of a jungle in Cambodia, there is a building that should not exist. It was built in the 12th century by a civilization most people have never studied, in a region most history classes skip entirely. It is larger than any medieval cathedral, larger than the entire Vatican. Its stone blocks are fitted so precisely that no mortar was needed to hold them together. They have held each other through 8 centuries of monsoon, earthquake, and jungle, simply through the weight of their own perfection. And on 2 specific mornings every year, the sun rises in perfect alignment above its central tower, an astronomical calculation built into stone by people who understood the movement of celestial bodies with a precision that staggers modern archaeologists. This was the capital of the Khmer Empire. For 600 years, from the 9th century to the 15th, one of the most powerful, most sophisticated, most extraordinary civilizations in the history of the world. A civilization that built the largest city on Earth. That fed 1 million people from an engineering system so sophisticated it manipulated an entire river's flow. That created art so beautiful it made visitors from China and the Arab world write in their journals that they were not sure whether they were dreaming. And a civilization that, quietly, slowly, invisibly, simply ceased to be. This is the story of the greatest empire Southeast Asia ever produced. And the question that has haunted archaeologists for a century. How does a 1 million-person city disappear so completely that the jungle swallows it whole? And the world forgets it existed? In 2012, archaeologists flew a helicopter over the Cambodian jungle with a technology called LiDAR, light detection and ranging. It works by firing laser pulses through the forest canopy and measuring how they bounce back, building a 3-dimensional map of everything beneath the trees. What the LiDAR revealed beneath the jungle stopped the archaeological team cold. They had expected to find the known temples, Angkor Wat, the Bayon, the dozens of other monuments already excavated and studied. What they found instead was a city. Not a cluster of temples with some settlement around them. A city. Comparable in scale and complexity to modern Phnom Penh, the capital of contemporary Cambodia. With a grid of streets and canals. With residential districts and industrial areas. With hydraulic infrastructure, reservoirs, channels, and water management systems, on a scale that suggested a population of at least 1 million people, and possibly far more. At its peak, Angkor was the largest city on Earth. Larger than medieval London and Paris combined. And for centuries after its abandonment, from the 15th century until the 19th, it was known to the wider world only through the reports of a few Portuguese missionaries and Chinese diplomats who had visited it and whose accounts were dismissed as exaggeration. A city of 1 million people. Hidden under a jungle. Forgotten so thoroughly that the world had to reinvent the technology to find it. When Henri Mouhot, a French naturalist, described Angkor Wat for European audiences in 1860, he wrote that it rivaled the Temple of Solomon and could have been built by an ancient Michelangelo. His readers assumed he was romanticizing. He was understating. To understand what the Khmer Empire built, and why it eventually could not sustain what it had built, you need to understand the concept at the heart of everything it created. The DEVARAJA. In 802 AD, a king named Jayavarman II declared himself Chakravartin, universal ruler, and established the concept of the DEVARAJA at the center of Khmer political life. The DEVARAJA, the God King, was not a ruler who claimed to be favored by the gods. He claimed to be one. The earthly manifestation of Shiva, or Vishnu, or another Hindu deity, his body the living connection between the human and divine realms, his capital city a physical representation of the Hindu cosmos. This theological idea had immediate and enormous architectural consequences. If the king was a god, his capital city had to be the center of the cosmos. And the center of the Hindu cosmos was Mount Meru, the sacred mountain of the gods. Every Khmer god king built his own temple mountain, a stepped pyramid temple whose towers represented the peaks of Meru, whose moat represented the cosmic ocean, whose inner sanctuary held the king's personal deity. For 3 centuries, from the 9th to the 12th, each new Khmer king built his own temple mountain. Each one larger than the last. Each one a more elaborate statement of divine authority. Each one requiring more stone, more labor, more water management, more administrative complexity to maintain. When Suryavarman II commissioned Angkor Wat in the early 12th century, he created the largest religious monument in human history. 37 years of construction. 5 million tons of sandstone quarried from mountains 35 miles away and transported to the site, the engineering of which alone was a feat comparable to building a pyramid. And Angkor Wat was not even the capital's most important function. It was a statement. The actual engine of Khmer power was something far more practical. And far more fragile. Angkor did not exist because the Khmer were exceptional builders. It existed because the Khmer were exceptional engineers. Feeding a city of 1 million people in the tropics, where the difference between feast and famine is measured in the timing of monsoon rains, required engineering on a civilizational scale. The Khmer built it. Over centuries, they constructed a network of reservoirs, canals, and water distribution systems that could store monsoon rainfall and release it during the dry season, allowing year-round rice cultivation on land that would otherwise support only a single annual crop. This hydraulic system was not an amenity. It was the foundation. The rice surplus it made possible fed the specialists who built the temples, administered the empire, maintained the army, and sustained the god-king cult that gave the whole civilization its organizing purpose. Without the water, there was no rice. Without the rice, there were no specialists. Without the specialists, there were no temples. Without the temples, there was no god-king. Without the god-king, there was no empire. Every element of Angkor's civilization rested on the hydraulic system working. And the hydraulic system, by the late 13th and 14th centuries, was beginning to fail. Archaeological analysis of the hydraulic system shows something that didn't make it into any official history, because the Khmer left no written records of decline, only of triumph. The canals were silting up. The reservoirs were filling with sediment. The system that had been the invisible foundation of everything was degrading, slowly, partially, but unmistakably. In 1177, something happened that should not have been possible. The Cham, a rival civilization from what is now central Vietnam, sailed their fleet up the Mekong River and into the Tunnel Sap Lake. And sacked Angkor. The inviolable capital of the God King, the center of the cosmic universe, the earthly Mount Meru, had been sacked. The theological implications alone were catastrophic. If the God King could not protect his own capital, what did that say about his divinity? The man who saved the Khmer Empire was a prince named Jayavarman VII. He was already in his 50s when he took power. He would rule for nearly 40 years. And in those 40 years, he built more than all the previous Khmer kings combined. His building program was, by any measure, one of the most extraordinary in human history. The Bayon, a temple of 54 towers and 216 stone faces, the faces now understood to represent Jayavarman himself, looking out over his empire in all directions. Ta Prohm, a temple complex requiring 80,000 workers and priests to maintain. Over 100 hospitals, distributed across the empire. The first state-sponsored healthcare system in Southeast Asian history. It was magnificent. And it was unsustainable. An inscription at Priya Khan records that the temple complex alone required 97,000 people to maintain. One temple. Nearly 100,000 people. Fed by more than 12,000 villages. Multiply that across the hundreds of temples, hospitals, roads, and royal projects that Jayavarman VII built across his reign. And you begin to understand the scale of what the Khmer population was being asked to sustain. Every stone block in every temple in Angkor was carried, placed, and carved by human hands. Every canal was dug by human labor. Every reservoir was maintained by human effort. For 600 years, the Khmer people built the most extraordinary urban civilization in Southeast Asian history. And by the 14th century, they were exhausted. The Khmer Empire did not fall in a single catastrophic defeat. It did not burn in one great fire. It simply, gradually, almost imperceptibly, stopped. The Ayutthaya Kingdom of Thailand, rising in the 14th century, launched a series of raids on Angkor that the declining empire found increasingly difficult to repel. In 1352 and again in 1394, Ayutthayan forces occupied the capital. Each occupation lasted years. Each was eventually ended. Each time, the recovery took longer than the last. And beneath the military pressure, the hydraulic system continued to fail. Tree ring records from across Southeast Asia, analyzed by modern paleoclimatologists, reveal something the Khmer inscriptions never recorded. The 14th and 15th centuries brought extreme, prolonged droughts to the region, alternating with catastrophic floods. The hydraulic system, already silting, already struggling under the maintenance burden of a population stretched to its limits, could not cope with climate instability on this scale. When the rice surplus faltered, everything else faltered with it. The specialists who maintained the temples could not be fed. The laborers who kept the canals clear could not be sustained. The administrative apparatus that had organized the most complex urban civilization in Southeast Asia began to simplify, not by choice, but by necessity. And then there was the question of belief. During the 13th century, Theravada Buddhism spread through Southeast Asia with remarkable speed. It offered something the God King cult had never offered the ordinary people of Angkor. A direct path to spiritual merit that did not require them to exhaust themselves maintaining the earthly residence of a divine monarch. The God King's legitimacy rested on a theological claim, that his divine nature justified the extraordinary demands placed on the population to sustain his cosmic architecture. When that claim stopped being persuasive, when ordinary Khmer farmers began to find spiritual meaning in a tradition that did not require them to dig canals for royal reservoirs or carve stone for temple walls, the foundation of the entire political system began to dissolve. By 1431, when Ayutthayan forces sacked Angkor for the final time, the population had already been leaving for years. Not all at once. Not in panic. Quietly. Individually. Family by family, village by village. Moving south, toward the Mekong Delta, toward smaller cities that made fewer demands and offered more safety. The Khmer did not lose faith in their empire because they were defeated. They lost faith in it because maintaining it had stopped being worth what it cost. Here is what happened after the Khmer court moved its capital south to the area of modern Phnom Penh in the mid-15th century. Almost nothing. Pause. Narrator, VO. No earthquake destroyed Angkor. No deliberate act of demolition. No conquering power systematically dismantling the temples, as happened to Persepolis, or Amarna, or Tenochtitlan. The jungle simply moved in. The strangler figs sent their roots into the stone joints. The monsoon rain filled the courtyards with soil year by year. Trees grew in the shadow of towers. Birds nested in the galleries. At Ta Prohm, the temple Jayavarman VII built in memory of his mother, the temple that the Cambodian government has chosen to leave partially unconserved, to show the world what rediscovery looked like. A strangler fig has been growing into the stone for 600 years. Its roots are now so deeply embedded in the structure that removing the tree would collapse the building. The tree and the temple have grown into each other so completely that they are now one structure. What human hands built, and what the jungle claimed, cannot be separated anymore. Perhaps that is the most honest image of what happened to the Khmer Empire. Not conquest. Not destruction. Not erasure. Absorption. A civilization so thoroughly returned to the landscape that produced it that the two became indistinguishable. Angkor Wat, the temple built by a Hindu god-king as the earthly representation of Mount Meru, is today one of the most important Buddhist pilgrimage sites in the world. The civilization that built it is gone. The building outlasted everything that made it. We ask the question, what was the Khmer Empire, and we expect an answer about history. About dates and kings and battles and monuments. But the more honest answer, the one that the archaeology of the past 30 years has been quietly assembling from LiDAR scans and sediment cores and tree ring records, is a story about infrastructure. About the relationship between what a civilization demands of its people and what those people are willing and able to give. The Khmer Empire built the most sophisticated water management system in the pre-industrial world. And then, over generations of overextension, climate stress, and maintenance neglect, it let that system degrade while continuing to build monuments to divine authority that the degrading system could no longer support. The god-kings of Angkor kept building temples while their canals silted up. They kept commissioning vast projects of divine architecture while the rice surplus that paid for those projects diminished. They kept demanding, from a population already stretched to its limit, the labor and resources to sustain a theological vision that the climate and the centuries had made unsustainable. And the people, quietly, individually, without drama or declaration, stopped coming. This is the warning the Khmer Empire carries across 8 centuries. Not about military defeat. Not about foreign conquest. About the gap between what a civilization believes about itself and what it is actually capable of sustaining. The Khmer built something that will outlast their civilization by 1,000 years. Angkor Wat will still be standing when every building erected in the 20th century has crumbled. But the system that fed the people who built it, the canals, the reservoirs, the hydraulic infrastructure that was invisible and unglamorous and absolutely essential, that they let fail. Empires rarely die in one day. They decay quietly. In the infrastructure no one is photographing, in the maintenance no one is celebrating, in the slow degradation of the systems that hold everything else up. Until one morning, the people who were supposed to maintain it look at what it costs to keep going, and quietly choose somewhere else to live.